So my name's Gill Littleworth. I currently am the Academic Coordinator at Multimedia English Academy in Ubrique in Spain. I've been working in the education field for about 20 years now in various ways, and that's in schools in England and nursery schools, Isle of Man and now Spain. Okay, I think it's a difficult subject to use the word integration initially with young people. I think to explain this should be done through different mediums. For example, looking at the empathy side of things. If you teach a child about empathy, then they understand more about accepting everyone for who they are, no matter where they're from, what they look like, or anything else that would stand out as different in that side. So if it's with a 10-year-old child, for example, I think the main thing being is that we're inclusive, and role modelling that in the classroom would be the primary way of using integration as an example. Sure. So for one example, I was working in an inner city school in Nottingham, and we had the majority of the school were from everywhere else apart from England. So to about 75% of the school were of ethnic minorities. And the common misconception that I saw and experienced was that those coming into the country, we had a lot of refugees arrive at the school at various times of the year. And the main thing being is that, that the misconception being that they didn't want to be there, that they were forced to come to school because they had left their country and come to our city. And what my experience was actually the opposite. So these families were just crying out and reaching out because they wanted the best for their children, they wanted the education, and they should be entitled to that. I think language is going to be a big barrier to begin with, because initially if you have young people coming into a setting, that's going to be the first and foremost. It's going to be scary, it's going to be a strange environment for them, so that's going to be a big challenge. With the language barrier as well, as a teacher, and you're trying to communicate and make the child or students feel comfortable, then that could be that side. Culturally as well, some things that are acceptable in their country may not be acceptable in the country they're now in, and vice versa. So this is something that, to be aware of in order to help that. Sure, going back to the school in Nottingham, the main thing being is that you have prejudice from other students towards those new students coming in initially. There was a big push with the school within the education side to educate the children about that we are all the same inside, and we were able to kind of go through the empathy side of things, appeal to that nature, making them think about what if it was them, putting them in the new people's shoes to be able to think, well, you're alone in a new country, you're alone without the language maybe, how would you be able to survive? And there could be initial problems, but through that programme we were able to eliminate a lot of prejudice. Obviously you're never going to eliminate everything, but through education that was the key part to it. Well, something from working from even very young learners, from babies upwards, stories have been a huge factor in this. So, for example, you can tell a story to include any moral. That's the beauty of storytelling. It can be physical, it doesn't have to be a book. It can be something that they're role playing and acting out. It could be where they imagine that, you know, they have landed on Mars or the moon. They are the minority. The aliens around them, they are the majority. So how would they feel? And it's about going through, again, the feelings, putting themselves in somebody else's shoes, and to try and relive that experience. So for me, storytelling, role-playing, puppets are a great way to be able to sort of, especially for young learners, to understand different ways. The main digital storytelling experiences I've had would be using, for example, an interactive whiteboard. With a young group of learners, being able to physically move the parts of the story, to manipulate the story themselves so they could choose how the story is going to end. And again, it's that physical aspect of being able to put themselves into the scene to be able to tell the story. Absolutely, definitely. I think no matter what the setting is, whether it be a language academy, whether it be high schools, primary schools, anywhere that you have some form of education, even at home with parents teaching their children, I definitely think there is room and for this to develop further and be an education for all learners. Again, depending on what the resources are, they could be on laptops, tablets, PCs, individually, done as a group on a whiteboard or a projector. Doesn't have to be interactive technology. And being able to, discuss as a class and to have time for that, and perhaps develop projects, and like I said before, with sort of finding ways to end the story that could be different each time, what would happen if, and it's giving them food for thought.